I'm going to have to unmute me. All right, thank you. It's 9:03. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our Vice Chair, Diana Wiedemann.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm going to open the meeting, our virtual meeting with the following for, it's June 17th, 2021. And I'm going to ask for roll call first.
Commissioner Wiedemann?
Here.
Commissioner Pollan? Absent by prearrangement. Commissioner Jones?
Here.
Commissioner Morris?
Oh, it looks like you're on mute there, Commissioner Morris.
That would help. Yes, I am here, but I would like to point out my name is spelled incorrectly. So.
Oh, let's get that corrected.
We're missing a C today. It's 2 C's and an I.
You got it.
Thank you.
And Chair Purnell is absent by prior arrangement.
Okay, perfect.
I don't know, did you get Marie Jones?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. So I call the meeting to order. It's a little after 9 o'clock, probably 9:03. And I'm going to read our information here. Effective March 27, 2020, the Mendocino County Planning Commission meetings will be conducted virtually and not available for in-person public participation pursuant to State Executive Order N2920. Meetings are live streamed and available for viewing on the Mendocino County YouTube page at youtube.com, Mendocino County Video. In order to minimize the risk of exposure during this time of emergency, the public may participate digitally in meetings by sending comments to pbscommissions@mendocinocounty.org in lieu of personal attendance. All public comment will be made immediately available to the commissioners, staff, and the general public as they are received and processed by staff and can be viewed as attachments to this meeting's agenda at the Planning Commission agenda page. Requests for telecomment are required to be submitted prior to 7 a.m. the morning of the meeting. If you requested to speak under public expression, please call in now.
Hey, Julia, we may have a problem.
Wait, hold
The
on.
video's frozen.
The video's frozen.
Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like, I'm sorry, Commissioner Wiedemann, if we can pause for a moment here, it looks like we may have a challenge with our streaming software. Is it still running okay on your end?
running over here.
Yes.
It's frozen.
It's just you, it's just,
See? Okay.
I don't know, I'm watching it.
Okay, good. Go ahead and keep going then. It looks like we are okay.
Okay. So I might have jumped a little. Clerk to conduct roll call. So we already did roll call.
Right.
So I'm going to move to agenda item number 2, Planning Commission Administration. Do we have a determination of legal notice?
Legal notice has been determined in this matter.
Okay. Item number 3, Director's Report. Our director has asked that we move this item after hearing the Carson agenda item, as he has a previous meeting that he will be involved with first. And then I'm going to go on to matters from public. The Planning Commission welcomes participation in the commission meetings. This item is limited to matters under the jurisdiction of the commission that are not on the posted agenda and items which have not already been considered by the commission. No action will be taken. Individuals wishing to address the commission under public expression are welcome to do so via comment or email in lieu of personal attendance. Email shall be sent to pbscommissions@mendocinocounty.org. All correspondence received will be made available on the Planning Commission agenda page. And once again, to submit public comments via telecomment, a request form must have been received by 7 a.m. the morning of the meeting. Ask clerk if there's any questions. Are there any questions or public expression?
No, not,
Not for public.
You're muted.
oh, we're muted. Back to, yeah.
Yeah, we don't have any public expression comments.
And there is no agenda item for consent calendar at this point?
No, there is not.
Okay, then let's move into the agenda item 6A, a continuance. It's case number MS 2019-0003, Carson, continued from May 6, 2021.
And if I may, Chair Wiedemann, it
Yes.
looks like we have our audio is working, but our video is frozen. So I'm going to see if you would be willing to grant us just a 5-minute sort of pause here while we try to see if we can get the video up and running before we start the presentation on this particular item. So the public can see the same visuals that the commission may see.
Okay, so let's have a 5-minute break.
Perfect, thank you.
All right.
I'm not frozen.
All right, folks, just oh. Excuse me. Sorry, I was on mute there. Just bear with us another moment or two here. We're going to be it looks like we got the video issue fixed. We just need to make one confirmation, and then we'll let you know when we can keep going. Thank you so much for your patience. Technology challenges are the worst. Okay, thank you. Okay, all right. Thank you so much for bearing with us. We should be set to go now.
All right, I'll wait. Are the other commissioners on? Unmute. All right, so we're resuming the Planning Commission meeting on item 6A, and which is MS 2019-0003 Carson, continued from May 6th, 2021. Before we open the meeting from staff and participants and applicants, I want to ask County Council to explain to the commission and the applicant about when a commissioner abstains. So County Council, can we have your report on that?
So Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, through the chair. This item was initially heard on May 6th and was continued. During that meeting, Commissioner Wiedemann was not in the meeting for the majority of the staff presentation on this item. And it was determined, rather than go through the entire presentation at that time, that she would abstain from the item. And one correction we'll make to the draft minutes later on this meeting is the phrasing in the minutes use the word recuse, and that is not accurate. There was no recusal, it was an abstention because she wasn't a participant. That being said, in terms of rules on due process, if a commissioner had entirely missed a prior meeting on a hearing that was later continued, that commissioner can participate in the continued meeting if they can say they've watched the entire meeting and reviewed the materials and is prepared to participate. So under that notion and idea, we're looking to Commissioner Wiedemann for a confirmation that she has reviewed that prior meeting and the materials for this item, is ready to participate and ask any questions of staff or the applicant as she would see fit. And that will provide us with a quorum for this item, since quorum for the commission is now 3 of the 5 commissioners.
Yes, I have. I saw the YouTube video for the whole presentation from beginning of opening the meeting on May 6th to the end of the continuation of the Carson. So I not only participated for 3/4 of the meeting last May 6th telecommunication, but I also listened to it all again on YouTube. So I feel comfortable and confident I can participate.
Deputy County Counsel Matt Kudrowski, excellent. I might just tweak that language to say that we did not participate in May, but you may have been watching in May while you actually came on. But as of now, you're ready to participate, and we can move on with the item.
Okay, thank you. With that, is there any staff correspondence and telephone calls received for this item?
There was several public comment letters, I believe, from the last hearing that have been posted this morning to the Planning Commission agenda page. And then I do understand there is one additional comment letter that we are searching to find. It may have been sent to the wrong email account, so we will be getting that uploaded as soon as we have that in our hands and sharing that, and we can let you know when we reach that, once it's been posted.
Okay, with that, can we have the staff presentation?
Sure. This is Planner Cherry, Juliana Cherry with Mendocino County Planning and Building Services. As mentioned, this item was continued, and thank you very much to the Commission to give staff the opportunity to clarify some matters regarding the proposal and present them to you today. So I'd like to share my screen, if I may, because some of the questions had to do with the access on the property. So this is a picture of a revised tentative parcel map. Since the Planning Commission met, the applicant has filed a further clarified tentative map. And parcel 1 is the westerly parcel along the shore. And here is the tufted hairgrass meadow that we're recommending be protected with a buffer. Here is the existing house. And this is the 100-foot buffer for the tufted hairgrass meadow. This is the proposed boundary between parcel 1 and parcel 2. Parcel 2 is to the east, and it fronts a private road called Casper Point Road here on the east, where it's 50 feet wide. The lot is 50 feet wide. There's an existing fenced garden area on parcel 2 and an existing well on parcel 2. There's also an existing driveway that goes all the way from Casper Point Road to the house to the west. So one of the questions that the Planning Commission had was, is there a discrepancy between CAL FIRE recommendations and the Department of Transportation? And there is not. CAL FIRE regulations would consider this the driveway apron or the access point onto parcel 2, and the driveway would serve both parcel 2 and parcel 1. Our county regulations would consider this a road easement across parcel 2 for access for parcel 1. Because it is a road easement, our requirement is that it be wide. The Department of Transportation's recommendation is that this road easement be 22 feet wide. And CAL FIRE, they are not going to ask for a less restrictive road width than what the Department of Transportation asks for. CAL FIRE, because they would consider this a driveway and not a road, which is really the difference between CAL FIRE and the Department of Transportation. Their driveway requirements are narrower than their road requirements. But CAL FIRE has made it clear to staff that they would not ask for something less restrictive than what the county is asking for. Another thing that the Planning Commission had talked about was the location of the hammerhead, which the Department of Transportation typically asks for at the terminus of the road, which would be the boundary between parcel 2 and parcel 1. So typically the hammerhead would be located here. In talking with CAL FIRE prefers to have the hammerhead within 50 feet of the structure. And so we discussed it and we agreed that the hammerhead could function as a driveway approach to the future home on parcel 2, that the hammerhead would be part of the easement, the road easement on parcel 2. And so here it's shown on this revised tentative map as located mid-lot, where the property owner has applied to construct a single-family home on this new parcel once it's approved. The applicant is also showing a narrower unpaved road, which is the existing condition. The existing condition of this unpaved road is about 9 or 10 feet wide. Casper Point Road over here, the private road, its width varies, and at its widest point, I believe it's 19 feet. And at its narrowest point, I think I read it was about 15 feet. So staff is recommending a 22-foot wide private road across parcel 2, and then the driveway can continue on parcel 1. I'd like to note that unlike driveways, roads are included in total lot coverage. So one of the discussions that came out after staff had met with Department of Transportation and CAL FIRE in talking about the project with the applicant, the length of this proposed road is about 600 feet. And at 22 feet wide, that really contributes a lot of the allowed lot coverage for parcel 2. Staff suggested that the applicant look at some different configurations so that there would be greater available lot coverage for development on the property. For example, staff talked with the applicant about making this a panhandle lot where parcel 1 would have the driveway extend all the way to Casper Point Road. We also talked about, since this is 2 acres and this is 2.67 acres, making the 2-acre parcel slightly larger and the 2.67 acre parcel slightly smaller to increase the lot area parcel 2 and thereby increase the available lot coverage, because potentially this road easement will take up quite a bit of the lot coverage. I'd like to note that while it is included in lot coverage because it is a road, the material that the Department of Transportation is recommending is a permeable material. So water still will be able to percolate through the road. The rainwater will be able to be absorbed into the ground, and it should not be a significant source of stormwater runoff. Another thing that came up with talking with the applicant was the Department of Transportation in their initial recommendation asked to have culverts be repaired. And this is rather a standard recommendation when subdivisions or developments come forward and there are repairs that are needed on roads adjoining county roads or on county roads. The Department of Transportation asked the property owner to contribute towards providing good vehicle access and good roads, quality roads. So this culvert repair was a condition. And I apologize, I assumed the culvert was here where Casper Point Road joins proposed parcel 2. It's not. it is where Casper Point Road connects to the county road. So, and that is associated with quite a bit of dynamic habitat. There has been no application materials associated with improvements or what the extent of the work might look like. And we really haven't been able to analyze what that culvert repair would be. Meanwhile, not only the applicant, but all of the property owners along Casper Point Road are fervently working to actually apply to repair this culvert. And they're all contributing to an application where that culvert will be repaired, and the appropriate analysis regarding the wetland and the habitat is going to be a component of that application. Therefore, after talking with the Department of Transportation about this culvert repair, the Department of Transportation graciously removed their recommendation regarding that condition. So you'll see the culvert, the condition requiring the culvert repair is stricken from the revised recommended conditions in the resolution exhibit. It's staff's recommendation that the revised and updated resolution be considered by the Planning Commission. The revisions include additional clauses and condition revisions. Staff recommends the Planning Commission adopt a negative declaration for the project and approve the 2-lot subdivision as proposed without the culvert repair. It would be my pleasure to go through the revisions of the resolution and its exhibit, including the conditions, but I will leave that to the commission to ask questions and I can respond. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Was there any other information that staff wanted to present at this time? If not, we had closed the public hearing at the last meeting, but because we continued this, I feel it's fair, and we have a short meeting, a calendar today, that we reopen it for the applicant and also for any public speakers, if there are some.
I am reminded, Diana, that Planning Commission Chair Wiedemann, I am reminded that perhaps the Division of Environmental Health has some comments regarding water, because that was some of the comments that the Planning Commission had asked, and perhaps the Department of Transportation has additional comments as well.
Okay.
If you wanted to inquire if they have that.
Yes, can we hear from them first?
Good morning. Thank you for your time. I want to let you know that you have a presentation coming from the hydrologist that was hired from Lawrence and Associates later in the day, and she has a lot of details to talk about. I wanted to start with saying Environmental Health has worked with the applicant for over a year to address the several concerns that staff brought up in regards to their water requirements and the hydrologic study that was on file. The applicant voluntarily worked with staff and hired another hydrologist to address the concerns that staff brought up throughout the year. And we came to a conclusion that the information from the old hydrologic study, in addition to the 2 additional inspections by the current hydrologist from Lawrence and Associates, addressed our concerns, and Environmental Health has no concerns with the current requirements of water on site. And I will be happy to answer more detailed questions after the presentation and the applicant has had a time to speak.
Thank you. Do we want to have the hydrologist speak again? Marlena, is that?
My recommendation, Chair Wiedemann, would be that we first hear from if Department of Transportation has any additional comments, and then we can turn to the applicant and agent and possibly part of their
Okay, let's hear from, if we have CAL FIRES or Department of Transportation.
Alex Quer, Department of Transportation. We don't have any additional comment at this point.
All right. And in our package, we have your recent letter for clarification. And so with that, is CAL FIRES wanting to weigh in today? Okay. Right. Right. Okay, so with that, no other staff report at this point. So can we then open it up to if there's any public comments, and then we can go to the applicant.
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Gudrowski. I might recommend going to the applicant before public comment.
Okay. May we have the applicant first?
Hello, this is Tara Jackson with Wind Coastal Planning and Biology. I am agent for the applicant. First of all, I would like to thank the commissioners for their time and attention to this project. I would like to thank Planning and Building and the other county agencies who have worked on this project, especially Juliana Cherry. I appreciate the time MDOT, CAL FIRE, and Planning took following the last hearing to discuss some of the road width requirements. We appreciate and support MDOT modifying the recommended conditions to allow for the turnaround and the driveway to serve as a single development. That being said, we do have another request. Well, it's really more information regarding the request that was brought up during the May 6th Planning Commission hearing, and that is a request, an exception to the road width standards, and therefore a modification of condition 19A. We acknowledge that we have not received an exception directly from MDOT, but as was discussed during the previous hearing for this project, commissioners do have the authority to review and grant an exception to a recommended county agency standard. So I have submitted an additional memo, the addendum to transportation exception request. And in that, I will give a summary of what was discussed during that. It was posted to the county website and available for the commissioners to review. And so I will discuss that, give a summary of that, as well as the civil engineer, Tim Twomey, also provided an addendum. It's dated May 31st, also posted to the county website, which is something else that I will discuss in support of an exception request. So the current standard, or the current recommended standard, is the 22-foot wide road from Casper Point Road to the terminus of proposed parcel 2. We are requesting that commissioners approve the project with a 9 to 10 foot wide road across proposed parcel 2. Now, I have laid out this exception based upon the MDOT Tab H exception procedures, which one needs to meet 4 findings. The first being that the strict application of this chapter would create an unnecessary hardship due to special circumstances or conditions affecting said property. So as was discussed by Juliana Cherry during her presentation, by imposing a 22-foot wide road on this parcel with the current configuration of proposed parcel 2, that will consume 16% of the lot coverage. The maximum lot coverage for a 2-acre parcel in rural residential is 15%. So by imposing a 22-foot wide road, it will exceed the maximum lot coverage, thereby negating the ability to do any further development, including the road itself, because the road itself would be 16%. So I have also provided a table that shows different road widths and the amount of lot coverage that they would consume with the current configuration. And really only 9 to 15 feet would allow for any further development, and even a 15-foot wide road would consume 12% of the lot coverage. So that would be the special circumstances. Now, number two, that the exception is consistent with the intent of the requirements of this chapter and does not constitute a grant of special privilege. Well, Howard DeShield, Director of Transportation, has already supported an exception to the standard road width requirements of Casper Point Road, which currently serves 15 parcels. This extension across proposed parcel 2 will only ever serve 2 parcels, and that's because of the zoning, where it's RR5 with the variable 2. So 2-acre parcels is the maximum that it can ever be built out. So this will never increase more than 2 parcels. It'll only ever serve 2 parcels. And Casper Point Road it was not considered necessary for that to be 22 to 26 feet wide for 15 parcels. Therefore, this would not be a grant of special privilege. It's actually in conformance with what has already been supported across Casper Point Road. Number 3, that the exception would not result in significant increased adverse environmental impacts compared to the strict application of the requirements of this chapter. This is about 600 feet, and at 22 feet wide, although this would be a pervious surface because it would be gravel, it would be compacted. It would change the vegetative structure of the area. It would require removing some trees on the parcel in order to accommodate a 22-foot wide road. So it would actually have more of an environmental impact for the purposes of serving 2 parcels. And the environmental impact, when one really considers safety and access, whether safety and access is being met, that leads me to point 4, that the granting of the exception will not be detrimental to public health, safety, convenience, and general welfare, or injurious to other property in the vicinity in which said property is situated. So we understand that CAL FIRE and MDOT have different definitions of what constitutes a driveway and what constitutes a road. And that MDOT being the agency that provides these recommendations for the subdivision, that their recommendations are what take precedence. However, when one really looks at what the CAL FIRE standard is if it was just CAL FIRE, our emergency services, if they were to look at this, they would have said driveway, and they would have said 10 feet wide is sufficient. Therefore, it can be inferred that a 10-foot wide road to serve 2 parcels is sufficient for access and emergency vehicles. So it is for those reasons we request that the commissioners grant an exception to the currently recommended 22-foot wide road width requirement, and instead approve the project with 9 to 10 feet. 9 is the current width. 10 feet would be the width of a CAL FIRE driveway. Now, as I mentioned, this is all predicated upon the current configuration of the tentative map and the way in which the parcels are laid out. And Juliana Cherry has brought up that, well, if one did rearrange and reconfigure the parcels, then the overall lot coverage issue may no longer be a problem. But that brings me to the civil engineer's letter. And in that, so even if we did do a reconfiguration and a flag lot, it is my understanding that it would still need to be 22 feet wide up to that hammerhead T. So that's going to be approximately 300 feet, maybe 250 feet of a 22-foot wide road to serve these 2 parcels. And a civil engineer, when he provided his May 11th letter, he explained that this is a very low volume local road that in order to maximize vegetation preservation, which even at that, if you did the reconfigured flagpole configuration, that you would have those 22 feet wide, you would still need to take out trees for about 250 feet of 22 foot wide. And so you're not maximizing vegetation preservation. And so that is why the civil engineer, and also that, this can alter the stormwater regime on the property because of the different type of compacted gravel. So with both taking into consideration the current configurations and how that would max out the lot coverage tabulation, and then even if we had a reconfiguration that would still necessitate a certain length of 22 feet wide, this road will only ever serve 2 parcels. It has adequate access for 2 parcels, as well as it is safe for emergency vehicles, because CAL FIRE, if it had just been their definition, it would have been a driveway, which would have needed to be 10 feet wide. And those are our reasoning and justifications for requesting this exception to the 22-foot wide road width standard. I understand that Julia Carson has some additional thoughts that she would like to point out. And I'm, of course, available for any further questions throughout the hearing or immediately following what my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Can we hear from, who's next in line there, Julia?
My name is Julia Carson. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak with you. I have 2 items I would like to briefly discuss. The first one I would like the planning commissioners to actually address with each other, because it's something that I was told only I could bring up. So it wouldn't have been something Tara or my consultants could bring up. So if I'll very briefly state what that is, and I'll hope that you'll be able to discuss it among yourselves and make a decision. And then I would like to briefly discuss what Tara just discussed as well. So I shouldn't take too long. The first item has to do regards with the Hammerhead T. MDOT has agreed that it can be part of the driveway for parcel 2. Since it is my intent to sell this parcel, I would like to request that the planning commissioners allow that the Hammerhead T to be created when a permit for the house is filed with Planning and Building Services for the following reasons. 1, the purpose of the Hammerhead T is to provide adequate turnaround area for vehicles due to the increase in density, and installation of the turnaround shouldn't be necessary until density actually increases. 2nd, putting in a Hammerhead T as a condition for the minor subdivision means that both the vegetation and pristine nature of the land will be disturbed prematurely and unnecessarily. And finally, it is respectfully requested that the language of condition 19 that states, quote, the turnaround must be constructed before parcel map recording, unquote, be taken out for the reasons stated above. So that's what I would like you to discuss amongst yourselves and see if you can make that change. The next item I'd like to briefly address has to do with the driveway, my current driveway, which will be the Casper Point Road extension. Last February, Howard DeShiel told me that he would agree with an expert opinion of a civil engineer if they stated that Casper Point Road was safe and thus would allow it to remain at its current width. Casper Point Road services upwards of 15 parcels. Tim Toomey, a civil engineer, then wrote a letter to Mr. DeShiel stating as such, and Mr. DeShiel allowed the road to remain as is in his stated February 9th letter. However, in that same letter, Mr. DeShiel informed us that my driveway would now become an extension of Casper Point Road and would need to be widened to 22 feet. This road driveway will only ever service 2 parcels. Therefore, I went back to Tim Toomey, who wrote a letter dated May 31st. In it, he states several reasons why the extended portion of Casper Point Road, my current driveway, should remain at its current 9 feet or be extended to the CAL FIRE standard of 10 feet, as stated in CAL FIRE Captain Chris Bellerga's letter of February 3rd. Mr. Toomey states that, quote, it is neither logical nor practical to require widening nearly 600 feet of the extended portion of Casper Point Road to a width of 22 feet when it can only ever accommodate a maximum of 2 parcels, when an exemption is granted by Mr. DeShiel for a 1,400-foot road that services 13 plus parcels and is 15 feet at its narrowest. Toomey further states that under road standard number 16, quote, vegetation preservation requires adherence to minimum disturbance of damage to trees and vegetation, end quote, and that, quote, widening the road from 15 to 22 feet could negatively impact vegetative growth and stormwater drainage. In conclusion, it is my sincerest hope that the planning commissioners will agree with both the CAL FIRE captain and the civil engineer that the road is accessible and safe to bring emergency vehicles onto the property and allow my current driveway and future extension of Casper Point Road to stay at its current 9 feet width or be extended to the CAL FIRE standard of 10 feet. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you for your presentation. Is there any more remarks from staff before I open it up to the commission for questions of staff?
Hi, Bonnie here. I did have a short presentation since there seemed to be a lot of questions at the last hearing. If I could share my screen, I have some slides to show.
Sure.
I'm not sure how that, okay. Okay, sorry, I thought I unmuted myself. Should I share my screen or my presentation? Okay, share. Yeah. I'm going to stop for a minute and try it again. Oh, it doesn't matter. Okay. There. So, won't go full screen, unfortunately. Okay, there we are. So I'm Bonnie Lampley. I'm the principal hydrogeologist of Lawrence & Associates. I've been with the company since 1991. I'm a California professional geologist and a certified hydrogeologist. And Julia hired Lawrence & Associates to evaluate the 1991 report. Let's see here. Go down. First, let's have a quick look at the map. Here is the Carson parcel in the red outline. This is Carson's current well. This was, I'm calling it the new well, which was the 1991 test well. This is the Duff well, and this is the Passero well. Those are the closest neighbors. So, back in 1991, it was proposed to do a parcel split of this parcel. And as part of that process, a hydrology study was conducted per the Mendocino Coastal Groundwater Development Guidelines, which were adopted in 1989 and are still in effect. They haven't changed since that date. The report, well, for the current parcel split, Mendocino County indicated that the conclusions and recommendations of the 1991 report would be acceptable as a basis for the current split if they were supported by existing conditions such as the climate, precipitation, level of development, and groundwater levels. You know, that is whether any of those items significantly changed since 1991. So our goal in the work that we did was to evaluate whether those conditions had changed since 1991. So going back in 1991, Clark Engineering conducted a 17.3-hour pump test on the new well and measured the water levels in that well along with the other older well and what are now the Duff and Pass Row wells. The 17-hour pump test was appropriate per the groundwater development guidelines. I see there was a comment just submitted that that suggested that a 72-hour test would have been more appropriate. But according to the guidelines, a 17-hour test is appropriate for like a parcel split or small water use, a single family resident test. The 72-hour test is required if a well is in bedrock and the development is going to be a major subdivision or a large groundwater user, which is not the case here. So the 17-hour test was appropriate. It was conducted in October of 91, which was near the end of the 87 to 92 drought period. So the results could be considered conservative in that it was a drought period, not a wet period. They concluded that the dry season yield of the well was 0.8 gallons per minute. And because that was less than 1 gallon per minute, that storage would also be required. Water storage would be required. That's per the guidelines. They also concluded that there would not be interference on neighboring wells and that there was sufficient groundwater supply for the new parcel. So, and the little table on the right is just a snip from their report showing, the basic measurements. They pumped the well at 1.36 gallons per minute. The depth of water was about 11 feet, and they had 140 feet of drawdown in the well. They pulled the water down almost to the bottom of the well. Again, our task was to evaluate whether the conclusions and recommendations of the 91 report were okay if the existing conditions were similar. So we did the following things. We reviewed the 91 report, of course. We measured water levels a couple times in the 4 wells in the area, in the Carson wells and the Duff and then the Duff well. In July of 2020, we requested to measure water levels in Duff and Pass Row wells, but they preferred that measurements be made later in the season. So we came back in September of 2020 to do those measurements. At that time, the Pass Row well was inaccessible. We just couldn't get into the well without pulling the pump or moving it around, which we didn't want to disturb it that much. So we did not measure that well. So in July and September, we measured water levels, and in early September, we put a continuously recording device in the new well on the Carson property to see how daily water levels changed, and if there was any, we could see any impacts from the pumping of neighboring wells. It was just a way to further characterize the aquifer and the water levels. We reviewed regional groundwater levels to see how they might respond during wet and dry periods, just to better understand the overall scene. We reviewed precipitation and temperature records, current land uses, and we also actually calculated potential interference on the neighboring wells because the The 1991 assessment of that really wasn't very robust, in my opinion. So we just went ahead and did that, even though it was not required by the county. So our findings. The water levels are generally similar between October of 1991 and July and September of 2020. They're slightly lower in September of, actually slightly higher in September of 2020, but really they're essentially the same in all the wells. And although we couldn't measure the Passero well based on the water levels in the Duff and Carson wells and the other analysis that we did, I would not anticipate that they would have been significantly different. We looked at the precipitation temperature trends, which are shown in these various graphs. There were no trends up or down in either temperature or precipitation over this period. On the right-hand side, the green lines in those graphs are the daytime temperatures, the blue lines are nighttime temperatures, the minimums and the maximums, and the little red dotted lines are averages. And what it shows is that, you can see that it's relatively the same for the period from 1934 through 2019. For precipitation, that's the graph on the lower right. Again, there was no significant trend for annual precipitation. I think the one thing that strikes me from this graph is that there appears to be more annual variability in the precipitation since the late 1980s. That is, wet water years are wetter than they used to be, and dry water years are slightly drier, or actually what they used to be. But just looking at the graph, it just seems like the annual variability is greater, but the overall average hasn't changed.
Okay.
We looked at groundwater levels in the area just to see how groundwater levels overall respond to precipitation in recent years. The best data for that comes from Mendocino City CSD, where they monitor quite a few wells in town there. We chose a well that was situated similarly to the Carson well. It's 150 feet deep and it's located on the headlands near the ocean. So it's very similar to the Carson and the Duff and Passero wells. And as the graph on the upper right shows, the water levels are there in the brown line, and they measure them in winter, or in the wet season and the dry season, which accounts for the peaks and the valleys there. The blue line is precipitation, and you can see that generally the water levels follow annual precipitation. That is, when there's less rainfall, the water levels decline, and when there's more rainfall, they rise. Shows that this area isn't being over pumped. Even though there's a lot of groundwater development in this area, the wells, the aquifer recovers during wet years. And it's relevant because that area is very much more developed groundwater-wise than is the area around the Carson project. So I would expect that generally that water levels in the area of the Carson parcel would behave similarly to this.
Bonnie, could you get to the conclusion soon, please?
Okay, so so we saw that there would be no interference. There really haven't been significant changes in land use. So my conclusion is that there hasn't been significant changes in the groundwater levels, precipitation, or development that would render the 91 study invalid. and that, the conclusions from that study, can be used for the current parcel split. And I did have one more slide quickly. There was some discussion of dry wells in the area, and this figure shows where those wells are in relation to the Carson wells. They're labeled by the arrows here. There's many reasons that a well can go dry, from lowered levels from drought, from interference from neighboring wells, pumping more than the aquifer can provide, or degradation of the well casing if it gets clogged. So I just wanted to point out that these wells going dry could have many reasons. The wells might not be shallower than other wells, so that basically, because these wells were reported to be dry does not indicate that that's going to be a problem at the Carson parcel, and certainly their well hasn't had any problems. So that was my presentation. I can take questions.
Thank you.
Okay, I will do that.
All right, with that, that was the final presentation by the applicant and the consultants and planning staff. With that, I'm gonna have open questions from the commission, and I could do it by roll call. And if Commissioner Macy Morse, if you have any questions at this time, we're still going to go into another round, but this is just questions for staff.
No, I think I'm good. I think staff did an excellent job preparing their documents and their presentation. Thank you.
Commissioner Jones?
I do have a question. So I looked at the road width for Casper Point Road from its intersection with the main road. I think it's just called Casper Road. And that road is basically between 10 and 12 feet, its entire length out to the Carson parcel. And so it seems strange to me that staff did not consider an exception for the road width, given the analysis that Wind Coastal Planning put together, given that the road access all the way out there is much narrower than 22 feet. And when I think about sort of the unintended consequences of making a really wide road like that, certainly the applicant's concern about not having a developable envelope is pretty significant. It sort of negates the whole purpose of our being here. And I'm wondering why you didn't respond to that comment letter in your own comment. Did it make you think at all? Did it make you change your mind? And then also, I'm just concerned about adding that much more impermeable surface out on that parcel to essentially comply with an ordinance that allows an exception in unique situations, which seem warranted in this particular case, given the parcel configuration, the length of the road, the increased in non-permeable property, which would have some sort of impact, I assume, on water availability and certainly on native plant populations. And it just seems, frankly, you know, just from like the sniff test, like kind of a lot of road for two houses. So I'd love to hear a response to that comment. Okay, so in other words, you're not considering it because they didn't pay for it, not because it's not appropriate. I mean, I just want to separate out the two issues. Like, I'm just wondering if there's like a planning reason why you wouldn't accept it that's beyond just the fact that they wouldn't pay for it. got it. That makes sense.
Okay.
Planner Cherry with Mendocino County. We did discuss the lot coverage with the applicant, and I did advise them that given the recommendation for a 22-foot wide road, and that road is part of lot coverage, that they should look at reconfiguring the size of the lots. They have a 4.67 acre area that they want to divide into 2 lots that have a minimum of 2 acres. One of the lots they're proposing, parcel 2, is 2 acres. So one of the solutions to provide an application where you're proposing developable lots for subdivision is to arrange them and have sufficient area on them to have them be developed. The applicant, and I talked about this quite a bit, and actually the lot coverage, the fact that the road is meeting the lot coverage allowance was brought to my attention by Tara Jackson at Wind Coastal Planning. I'm very appreciative of that. And so we did have some good rigorous conversations. In the end though, Tara expressed to me that the applicant wishes to instead ask for an exception regarding the road width. And if the exception is granted, then they do have more than sufficient area for development on the lot and to create a road width that's 15 feet or 18 feet in width. I will mention that I am working on other projects besides this one, and one of the projects that I'm currently working on is very similarly arranged. It's 2 parcels where parcel 2 has a road that provides access to parcel 1, and that one was approved with an 18-foot wide road. And it actually bisects the lot, which is a little troubling because it makes that area on one side of the road less available for development, but it is also a gulch on that side, so it really wouldn't have been available anyway. It's really to the Planning Commission to make a decision whether they want to grant the exception and what the appropriate exception might be.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that.
I have a question for staff and that why didn't the parcel, and this is a design question, why didn't the, let's say the Bluff Top parcel, parcel 1, put a deeded easement through parcel 2 and have a separate entry, a new entry at the road, at the Casper Road, right directly to the house. So you have 2 driveways entering it. And that it would have been a deal on, it would have been a recordation on parcel 2. Then they could have kept their driveway because it's an easement, not a road, right? And so the question is, wouldn't, if that's capable to be done, that would have resolved the road issue.
I believe it would have.
And maybe they want to think about that.
So we did discuss that option with the applicant. Panhandle lots or flag lots are not uncommon. This is a frequent solution, and they could have provided that reconfiguration. But I believe that after consulting with their applicant, this is their best offer, that this is what the applicant is wanting and asking for. But we shall see if, depending on how things proceed, we'll hear more from the applicant later.
All right. Okay, any other questions from the commissioners for staff? Seeing no questions, then I'm going to close the public hearing, and then I'm going to bring the matter before the commission. With the public now, the public input is closed. So now it's the commission is going to open it up for discussion.
Actually, Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, if we've opened the public hearing, I might recommend at least confirming that there are or are not telecommenters for the item before closing the public hearing.
Oh, okay. I thought we didn't have any telecommunication.
We do
Comment.
not have anyone available on the line to provide telecomment, but I do want to alert the commission that there are 3 public comment letters that are posted to the Planning Commission
Right.
agenda page. There are several that were from the prior meeting, and then I believe one from for this particular meeting.
Right. With that, do you want to read that? We have it on our package, so to speak, in the emails. Do you need to read that?
Only if you would like, the commission would like for me to read that into the record. Otherwise, it's available there for viewing.
Yeah. Any commissioners need that? Okay. No. So with that, I'm going to close the public hearing, and now the matter is before the commission. So discussion. Any? I'm going to call on Commissioner Morse. Do you have any further discussion or motion?
I just want to make sure that I'm understanding everything correctly. Okay, so Ms. Carson is asking us for an exception to the driveway requirement that we allow a 9 or 10 foot driveway instead of the 22 foot that they originally were supposed to have. And CAL FIRE is in agreement with this, and also is the civil engineer. We have the ability to grant that exception today and not allow her and not make her go through other hoops and red tape and all. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And yeah, I think I'm clear. I'm good.
Commissioner Jones, do you have any comment or further discussion?
I really don't have any comment or further discussion. I get a sense of what has happened and brought us to this place. I still think we have an obligation to make the best decision no matter what brought us here. And that would be what I'd like to do.
Right. Okay. I have just a couple comments. Department of Transportation, our Department of Transportation is the lead agency, meaning that they're basically kind of, setting the line here. And their line is, yes, we want a 22 foot it's a gravel road they're asking. So it is permeable.
Somewhat.
Huh?
I said only somewhat. Most gravel roads are not that permeable. They're pretty impermeable.
It depends how you do it, I guess, but yeah, but it's considered more, it's not an asphalt road,
yeah.
But right. I think and the confusion part is that the applicant, didn't ask for, they didn't do that other piece of work. They're coming directly for us, asking us to mitigate basically our Department of Transportation's requirements. So for me, I'm kind of like in a quandary here. I understand 22 feet is an awfully wide road for the parcel, right? I also understand that it has its issues, but I'm not comfortable just kind of not respecting some of the Department of Transportation's requirements. With that, what would be a compromise?
First, let me make a suggestion, Diana.
Well, no, let me finish first.
Oh, okay. Right, I thought you were done.
So the compromise, and the compromise also is the turnaround, right? Is in the middle of the parcel, the new parcel being created. All right, and I understand that has less impact on the land base itself. Not a bad idea from a land use idea. Maybe what we could do is match the road that is funneling the Casper, the road that funnels to this parcel, that requirement, so that there's some consistency. I would feel more comfortable with that. And I just put that forward. That would be the compromise I would feel comfortable with.
Okay, I do hear that, and I guess I don't know why the applicant didn't just ask for the analysis for the exception, because it seems like maybe it's a timing thing. They thought it would take another year or something, and they're just frustrated with the process. Who knows? But it seems like that would have been a very easy way to get them what they wanted. That said, and I recognize that staff feels a little frustrated because they probably, you know, rightly want to get paid for the work they're being asked to do, and hence we're kind of in a weird little impasse. I do want to like zoom out from the personalities and whatever happened before and ask ourselves what's the best land use solution, because ultimately that's what's going to be there for a very long time. And the existing road width, you know, depending on where you measure it, it looks like it's between 11 and 13 feet, depending on where you measure it on the road that goes out to the highway. And her driveway is 9 feet. So I guess, you know, to me, 9 feet is enough. It's only 2 houses. It's not a lot of use. If all of this past stuff hadn't happened, I would have just got 9 feet, no biggie. So then the question is, are we wanting to punish someone for not going through the process correctly? And to me, that doesn't feel right, to be honest. I mean, I can punish her verbally, like what the hell? Like, just pay the damn fee. So we're not here doing this silliness. Like, honestly, I'm sure she spent way more, you know, getting all of these letters written that she had to get to support her from engineers and whatnot than just paying the damn fee. So there, I've given her a verbal chastisement. Hopefully she'll learn in the future. But I also always want to step back and ask the question, like, whatever you put there from a land use perspective is there forever.
Right.
I don't think a 12-foot road is necessary here. If you really feel strongly about it, like, I will support you, but, you know, I think 9 or 10 feet is fine. It's, for all practical purposes, a driveway. They could have done it differently. They didn't. Let's just solve it and move on.
So I'm going to respond back a little bit. Sure. There's a couple ways to do this because we're looking at land use. I think there needs to, it's 600 feet. It's 600 feet of run of a road. It's not 300 feet. So we have what I'm thinking, maybe what we need to do if they want a narrow road, they do another turnout. It's about in case of fire, in case of emergency, 2 vehicles. And you're right, maybe they can, year-round vehicles can drive all over the property. I understand, but I'm not sure of that. But so I don't want to burden anybody either. But this is a parcel split. And I'm trying to, you know, find the balance. And I certainly am not going to go any lower than 10 feet wide, period. I know what 10 feet roads are. I would actually feel more comfortable with 12 feet of gravel road. They could put 1.5 feet on each side. You know, it's not like major. Or if you do 10 feet, you do another turnout, a fire truck turnout. And that's very common when you have most roads, when we do subdivisions or use permits, for every 150 to 300 feet, we want a turnout, a fire truck turnout. I think ultimately on this parcel, I think to make the road a little wider would look better than an extra turnout. So I'm working to try to find a compromise and to move forward and to respect everybody's hard work. I guess we're down to a few feet, you know, and I'd like to get this behind. So maybe somebody could make a motion and let's see if we get, you know, go from there.
Macy, do you want to make the motion since we don't know where you stand between?
Well, I'll tell you where I stand, and then you can probably make the motion better than I can. Still, I am in support of the exception. That I agree with Commissioner Jones that 9 feet is plenty for this particular driveway. So I am in agreement with the exception.
Okay.
Commissioner Jones, you could maybe get my vote if you make it 10.
We'll do that just to make everybody happy, or make everybody a little bit unhappy, maybe is the way of saying it. Huh?
I think it's 10 feet makes sense.
I move that we approve the resolution of the Planning Commission MS 2019-2003, which does tell you how long she's been in this process, with the following revision. Under conditions of approval, item number, sorry, I'm scrolling down to find it. Item number 18A will be revised to the last sentence to read 10 foot wide, 8-inch minimum thickness, class 2 aggregate base rock road with access easement. That will be the minimum standard for the road subdivision. And we haven't really talked about the hammerhead. I'm fine with where it is. If we're going to require the road improvements, it makes sense to do the hammerhead improvements at the same time because you have all the equipment out there. So I think we should just leave it as is if anybody has any other additions. And with that, I will stop my movement.
Do I have a
second? Yes, I'll second that motion.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, just briefly,
Yes.
So based off that motion, what I think staff would appreciate is maybe a 10-minute break to write in the findings to the resolution that support making that exception.
Okay.
The findings that we have to make. I think we've talked about those and the reasons for that those could be made today, but we don't have them as part of the resolution yet. And then we can also bring back that change on the screen as well to the condition of approval as read by Commissioner Jones.
That would be lovely.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Let's break for, you need 10 minutes?
Let's do 10 minutes, please. Thank you.
Okay. Break for 10 minutes and we'll return in 10 minutes. Thank you.
staff is ready to continue whenever the commission is.
All right. Just waiting for Commissioner Jones.
Sorry, I was here. I just didn't have my mic turned off.
All right. All right. With that, the Planning Commission is resuming meeting. Do we have the written changes to this resolution?
Yes, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll just walk through those and then we'll make sure that it gets posted back to our web page once we are done with the meeting here. So everyone should be able to see the resolution here, with the first correction being to correct the date at the top here to June 17th, 2021. The changes here in red line were already part of the red line that was posted to our web page prior to the meeting. There's no additional changes made within this section here. Again, also with the date being added down here about the public hearing, this is again was part of the packet that was posted. So then we get on to page 2 here and finding number 2. And this is the consistency with the Division of Land Regulations. So the additional language that staff has added reads, the Planning Commission approves the requested exception to roadway standards as requested by the applicant, finding that pursuant to MCC section 17-87, that there are special, oh, excuse me, I have a double, there are, good correction, that there are special circumstances or conditions affecting the proposed division of land, and that it will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to surrounding property. The exception findings can be made as the lot has existing development. The reduced width would limit the amount of vegetation removal necessary and associated impacts to the environment. And there is minimal traffic along this private roadway that would be impacted by the granted exception. And I'll pause there to see if the commission had anything additional they wanted to add in support of making this exception finding.
Any commissioner have anything to add?
Nope, looks great.
Okay, wonderful. So then keep going here. We also added one additional line to finding 12 that would read that the Planning Commission finds that a 10-foot wide access and utility easement is sufficient to serve parcels 1 and 2. Okay. This language here, be it further resolved that the Planning Commission hereby grants the requested minor subdivision and exception to the Division of Land Regulations subject to the conditions of approval in Exhibit A. This correction had been made as part of the packet posted for this agenda item and just reflects the associated appeal period with the California Coastal Commission since this is a division of land. So next I will scroll through the conditions. So first change is correcting the date at the top here. And then there was the deletion of this condition as staff had noted during their presentation, as I believe this has already been complied with and information provided sufficient for that. There was renumbering then associated with the various conditions. Now at the last Planning Commission meeting, the commission had discussed having this revised language put into this particular condition about having erosion control measures in place prior to October 15th or before a weather event with an at least 30% chance of rain, whichever comes first. And then again, still renumbering here throughout the various conditions, and where we see the real change here is under transportation, and it's going to be condition 18A, where it previously read 26 and then in the revised said 22, it now reads 10 foot wide. And with that, the other changes that are throughout the rest of this resolution were already reviewed by the commission as part of the packet for today's meeting. So unless you have any other question, that concludes all the changes to the resolution.
That's good for me.
If I may, Alex, with Department of Transportation, if you can go back up to, I think it was item 12, it talked about the 10-foot access and utility easement.
Yes.
So the road is, you guys, the Planning Commission finds a 10-foot wide road, but the access and utility easement is still going to be 40 feet.
thank you for that correction.
You're welcome.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, that looks good. So now the commission is seeing this on number 12 here. If there's no concerns with that, then I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen.
All right, so maybe I should make another motion unless we have more discussion.
So with that, we already have our motion with the addendas to that motion, that resolution. Do we have a roll call vote?
Deputy County Counsel, this is for the record on the video. Apparently, I'm hearing we've lost the video of this portion of the meeting, but the audio is still there. I believe that staff has gone through that and has reviewed the changes verbally. And so I hope there's no questions or issues there. And this will be posted on the website after the meeting. So I think we're okay to continue. Unless staff wants to take a break to try and deal with video issues.
No, I think we're good. So I'm entertaining roll call vote. Commissioner Morse.
Yes.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes.
And my vote is yes too.
Motion passes.
So with that
3-0.
motion, yeah, motion passes 3-0. Yep. All right, well, thank you very much for all the hard work, staff and applicant. And we're moving on now to, Julia, are we ready to go back? Yes, let's go back to the director's report.
Good morning, Chair Wiedemann, members of the Planning Commission, Nash Gonzalez, Interim Director. I want to go ahead and provide you a brief director's report. So number one, I just wanted to advise the commission that we've promoted 2 planners in-house to senior planner. That's Vandy Vanderwater and Russ Ford. With that, we will be recruiting to backfill those positions. And currently, we're still recruiting for a 3rd senior planner. So again, we are continuing to recruit. Also, we are currently still recruiting for a chief planner for our Fort Bragg office. That's ongoing. And then I want to bring the commission up to speed on our budget requests. And what the Board of Supervisors did on June 8th and 9th is basically they approved the department's budget, which are going to result in additional staff positions being allocated to the department. Part of the allocations is a reorganization of the Code Enforcement Division. So what we're looking at is the creation of a Code Enforcement Manager. Currently, we have an interim, which is Trent Taylor. That will now be converted to a full-time position. So we'll be advertising for a Code Enforcement Manager. We're looking for the creation of 2 Code Enforcement Supervisors, the creation of what we call promotional opportunities, because currently right now we're set up as a Code Enforcement Officer 1 with a 2 being a supervisor. What we're actually going to do is reorg by having positions Code Enforcement 1, Code Enforcement 2, Code Enforcement 3 officers, and then a supervisor, and then the manager. Also to be added in is one administrative assistant for code enforcement, 1 staff assistant, and 1 half-time department analyst for code enforcement. Additionally, we are also looking at adding 2 additional planners, 1 additional building inspector, 1 additional staff assistant, 1 senior program manager for grant supervision, and a half-time department analyst to assist in grant writing or grant reporting. This is to be shared with the Code Enforcement Division. There's our half-time in each division. Next item is I'm happy to report that the Board of Forestry on June 8th certified our safety element as recommended by the Planning Commission. The safety element is now scheduled to be heard by the Board of Supervisors on June 22nd for adoption. And finally, we currently have an RFP out for an update of both the zoning code and the subdivision regs. Proposals are due June 25th, and I mentioned this several months ago that we've received a grant to do our zoning code update. What we're going to do is because the subdivision regs and the zoning are so intertwined together that we're looking at revising both and hopefully creating what we call a development code. And I think Commissioner Jones will appreciate this, very similar to what the city of Fort Bragg had done in the past. Because I think there's so many overlapping issues, and there's a lot of new requirements with regards to fire safe standards that we have to put into the subdivision regulations at this point. So that would conclude my director's report. If the commission has any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Also, I put it out there if there's any comments from the public or any telecomments that have been received.
Commissioner Morse, do you have any comments? Commissioner Jones?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. I'd like to congratulate you on getting a budget augmentation and additional hires. I think it will make the planning process for applicants hopefully easier and faster. I think there's a lot of frustration in the community, and I also think for staff having to manage 20 or 30 applications at the same time makes it super inefficient. So I think it's awesome, and I congratulate you, and I look forward to hearing about a faster planning review process from the community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. I agree. I want to also say that bring on the planners, bring on the building inspectors, because what we're seeing, you know, I'm on the coast mostly. I have inland too, but as you all know, it's very cumbersome what's taking place. Building permits right now are taking almost 4 to 8 weeks. And there's a change that has happened, and it's a big frustration to stakeholders here on the coast. And that is contractors, that's people who are trying to get permits. And it's kind of at an all-time frustration. So we're happy to bring more people, but also there's been, I think it's gotten more complex what's being required for people, but there hasn't been an education to the stakeholders. And that's the frustrating part. They're used to getting building permits, handing in a certain amount of detail works. And today there's so much more being required, but there hasn't been, we haven't had those brown paper bag meetings with stakeholders to educate, to keep everybody informed. So I'm hoping we can figure out how to do that in the future. And thank you. And if you come up with any good solutions, that would be much appreciated. And one last question, how many code enforcements are on the coast?
Currently, we only have one code enforcement officer on the coast.
Okay, thank you.
And yay for updating the land use and development code. That's awesome too. I think that will make it easier for everybody. So I think all these changes are really going to be really super much appreciated for the community and business community and the contractors and the architects, and I'm sure you guys as well, because it's not fun swimming with all that work on your back.
You know, if I may add through the chair, the biggest challenge right now is going to be the recruitments. Right now, I am looking at what I call an unprecedented amount of retirements in the planning field right now, statewide, if not nationwide. I am constantly checking to see what the recruitments are. When we floated the senior planner position, during our recruitment period, there were at least 40 senior planner positions open in California.
Wow.
So we are finding that there is a huge challenge right now, not just for us, but for everybody in California to recruit talent. And it's not just, you know, planners, it's a lot of different folks out there in building and code enforcement and so on. But I'm very confident that we'll be able to recruit the code enforcement officers much more quickly than we will the planners. Because again, code enforcement is one of those areas where I think there's I'll say a resurgence in interest in code enforcement because of the, I'll just say the attitude nationwide in law enforcement. So the fact that a lot of people aren't going into law enforcement, but they're going into code enforcement is a blessing for us. But again, my biggest challenge is going to be finding planners, journey level planners that can, hit the ground running. And that's our challenge right now. But for some of these things like the land use code, we were going to do it in-house, but we got to the point where it's got to be done by an outside consultant. But we will have staff involved here in the department to get that training to manage the land use code.
All right.
Thank you.
Also, Nash, when you talked about the, revisiting our land use zoning code and our land use regs, right? How are we setting that up? Like, how is that like on our calendar, so to speak?
Well, there is no calendar yet because what we'll do is we'll review the proposals. This is basically going to be a 2-year project. And the idea is that, at least what I'm envisioning, is that the grant itself is really to address the housing issues because it's an HCD grant. So basically what we have to do is look at a revamp of the code that really addresses housing. The next thing is, reviewing the proposals, selecting a consultant, and getting a more defined timeline. There's a component that I built into the update code process, which includes a public outreach, which we do want to go out to the community and not only find out what is lacking or what needs to be addressed in the code, but at the same time, there's nuances today compared to the code that was written 40 years ago. I mean, when we look at our zoning code in this county, the first zoning code was adopted in 1956, and that code ran until 1981. And in 1982, we adopted the current code, and we've done some, I'll just say, some piecemeal additions to it and amendments over the years. But our code really needs an overhaul because we've got a lot of new things. And I'll explain one of the things that is one of the items that was brought up several years ago that is not addressed in our code is we do not in the zoning in any of the zoning districts have any provisions for industrial food processing. And if we ever were to attract anything along the lines of an industrial food processor, we'd need to amend our codes. Typically, we've handled those under packing and processing in ag. But really, industrial food processing doesn't necessarily belong in ag. It probably belongs in industrial zoning. The other thing that a lot of the codes today are addressing that didn't before are food trucks in certain areas. And so it's become one of those welcomed items as opposed to something that was discouraged 30 years ago. And so we want to revisit all of these new nuances. And again, the biggest issue here is housing. One of the issues that we want to tackle is our inclusionary housing ordinance. When our inclusionary housing ordinance was adopted back in 2009, it was really based on a knee-jerk reaction to the lawsuit on the housing element. And at that time, it was brought forth by the planning team, and I really don't think there was a lot of effort or research put into what would actually work. If we really look back at what has been achieved by the inclusionary housing ordinance is not much. Typically, an inclusionary housing ordinance relies on maybe anywhere from 10 to 15% of the units would be set aside. In our ordinance, it was 25%. Very undoable. And I think any developer that would look at that would just walk away and say, I'm not going to do this. The other thing is the way it was set up is the Planning Commission back in 2009 really wanted to apply it at the subdivision level. And all the inclusionary housing ordinances out there really do it at the building permit stage. not at the subdivision. So I think we really need to take a look at all these things and look at how all of the components of the code fit with one another. So I think once we've got a consultant on board, I think we're going to have a timeline, and I can bring that back to the commission. And obviously, I'd like to have a working session with the commission as well.
That'd be great.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you again so much for that work.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. Any other further thing to add to the report, Nash?
Nothing else.
Okay. With that, let's move on to matters from staff. Any matters from?
No
What?
matters from,
Matters from staff. Sorry, Julia.
no matters
Okay.
from staff today. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Then matters from the commission. Any matters from any commissioner? All right, we'll move on. And then approval for minutes of the March 19th, April 1st, April 15th, 2021. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of March 19th, April 1st, April 15th, and May 6th as included in the agenda packet.
I second that.
All those in favor? Aye? Aye.
Please hold on. Deputy County Council, there's one change to those minutes I'd like to make in regards to the May 6th meeting.
No.
And this is regarding page 2 of those minutes, the public hearing item on the Carson subdivision.
Hold on, yes, okay.
That item had down that after discussion with County Council, Commissioner Wiedemann decided to recuse herself from this item. I'd like to recommend replacing the word recuse with abstain from this item.
Okay.
And then that will reflect the discussion of the item we had today in the draft minutes for today's meeting as well. So one recommended change there for that motion.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you. All right. With that, we don't need a roll call vote. It's just a majority vote, correct?
Deputy County Council, we can do it by ayes and nays, but
Yes.
make sure we ask both, and if no one says nay, I think we're okay.
Yes. Okay, all those, once again, all those in favor of approving the minutes? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes stand approved. All right, so now we're ready to adjourn this short meeting. And I'm going to call the meeting that before the Planning Commission that we're adjourning this meeting at, what time is it now?
11:09.
11:09. All right, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Diana. Have a great day.